The bracket is set, or at least the projected bracket. There has been plenty of movement since the chaos of Saturday. The biggest losers were the trio of SEC contenders that took losses this weekend. Alabama and Ole Miss fell out of the top 12, while Texas A&M tumbled from 15 to 20. The Aggies can still reach the SEC title game with a win over Texas. Another team to fall is Indiana. There was much anticipation for Saturday's game against the Ohio State, said to be Indiana's first quality opponent. With their loss, the Hoosiers may have lost any margin for error the rest of the way. Meanwhile, a team that could be entering the mix under the radar is Tulane. The Green Wave, who are winners of 8 in a row, are just one spot behind the highest-ranked Big 12 representative, Arizona State. Our CFP crew breaks it all down.
Chaos that unfolded last weekend. The upset certainly had an impact on the college football playoff rankings and hence the projected bracket. Though right at the top, things remain the same with Oregon, Ohio State, and Texas leading the way. Rece Davis, Booger, McFarland, Joey Galloway, Greg McElroy. Biggest takeaway from the latest edition of the rankings?
Well, with 6 out of the top 16 losing, I wanted to see where the committee was going to stack a couple of these 2-loss teams. Would they be above some 1-loss team? They put Georgia and Tennessee above some 1-loss teams, which tells me these guys are actually watching the tape and they're watching these guys play. And it doesn't necessarily matter how many L's you have on the right side of the column.
And every predictor had Indiana inside the playoff bracket, even if they lost to Ohio State. So I was interested to see how far was Indiana going to fall. They're at number 10. They look like they're in a good spot, but there's some good games going on behind them, so it'll be interesting to watch what the committee does with Indiana having played their only tough game of the season and having lost on the road to Ohio State.
They even played their starting quarterback, too.
They did.
Remarkable thing.
He didn't do much, but they played him.
The thing that I kind of learned the most, and look, every committee is a little different.
Yeah.
This committee in particular does not put a lot of stock into strength of schedule. And I'm not saying they should, I'm not saying they shouldn't, I'm just acknowledging that based on where some of these teams are ranked, the top team in the country has a strength of schedule of 52. Notre Dame's at 5. They're at 78. Miami's at 6. They're at 59. Meanwhile, Georgia sitting there strength of schedule number 1, and they sit there at number 7. So I'm just looking at some of these rankings right now and just seeing that teams that maybe didn't play a very difficult road to get to this point aren't necessarily being penalized because they didn't play the quality strength of schedule that we see.
Some of that may have to do with these conferences are so imbalanced now, and the schedules are going to be unbalanced. So to your point, I don't know if they necessarily can go off the strength of record. We're going to have to watch the game and watch who you play and who you beat and not necessarily look at the metrics so much.
I think that's where they might be making a mistake, though, is that I think because of the imbalance, maybe we should be placing a little bit more weight on strength of schedule. Not saying they got this wrong. I actually quite agree with where they're at, 1 through 11. I don't know if I agree with Clemson at 12, but I digress. I do think, though, because of the imbalance and no divisions and championships being tough, strength of schedule should be weighted maybe a little bit heavier than it has been so far.
You look at these latest rankings and the two teams that benefited the most from the upsets this past weekend. Indiana staying in the field and seemingly a spot locked up, and Tennessee in the same situation.